So this morning I googled what an NFT is.
And now you're here.
It's pretty cool.
What do you think?
Yeah, nice idea. I actually, everyone is kind of, a lot of the creative people have come on the stage and started by discussing Ali's talk and how brilliant it was and how much because it was so good. I actually want to start by saying how absolutely incredible Photopia and Marwa and her whole team are, and what an incredible lineup this put together.
Thank you, guys.
So of course I have my two awesome fellow panelists. I have Mo, who is a multi-hyphenated talent. He is a producer, and he is an entrepreneur, and he is the founder of Destination Drone NFTs, and I'm going to let him speak of that in just a moment and how he got into the NFT space. And we have Timmy, who is my co-founder at Mo4, and also my brother.
It's a pleasure to meet you too.
Thank you for being here. And the visionary who kind of aggressively moved Mo4 into the NFT space with NFTY Arabia, NFTY Scene, of course, in the office. I never call him visionary. I just say, what are you doing with your shitty NFTs? And so this is your chance now.
Okay, what I'm doing my shitty NFTs.
No, wait. No. Okay, so let me start. Before we begin, so I'm assuming everyone in the audience has at least heard about NFTs. Put your hands up if you've heard about NFTs. Amazing. How many people in the audience own an NFT?
1.5 million. You're not sure if you own one or not.
You either do or you don't, guys.
I know someone who owns something. It's a really expensive one. Look.
Can I follow that up? Actually, I'm sure there's a lot of photographers in the audience. How many people in the last year have made money or income from their art or their photography outside of brand or commercial projects, purely for their art or photography?
Yay!
Nice one, Dania.
One person at Guna Photo Week. Purely from your art. So one person has made money too.
And Timmy.
Non-commercial work. Non-commercial, non-client, non-brand related work. Okay.
Nice.
A few. Nice. Very cool. Okay. Okay. So this is such a new market, and it's such a nascent market. And so what I'd like to do whenever we're talking about it is to start off with some definitions. So I'm going to ask both Mo and Timmy, I need you to give me the simplest, most concise, understandable definition possible. Think of this like a definition dance-off. The person who gives me the simplest definition wins an NFT, which will have no value because the market has tanked. Go for it.
Shall I go first? Okay. The simplest way I could describe it is any file format, such as a video, a static image, or a document, uploaded to a blockchain, which proves ownership of this content, thus giving it scarcity and value. Is that concise enough? Now I will describe blockchain in the most simple way as possible. It is a digital, tamper-proof ledger which confirms transactions over servers and computers across the world.
And can we get a...
Further?
فهمنا حاجة زي العالم عشان كده وهو بيدفع.
Blockchain is the antithesis to online banking because online banking is a centralized institution, but blockchain, there's no central institution controlling those transfer or transactions. It's across servers across the world.
And we'll answer that. That's a really good question, actually. Can we get one last definition? Because I know we'll end up saying this word or this idea a lot throughout this conversation. Web3.
Web3 is essentially a term that is now being used to coin the new development of the new internet. I would like to say what we're currently living in is considered Web 2.0, which is a lot of data and user uploaded experiences and content. Web3 is a little bit different because it's decentralized internet that allows ownership of the data that you're putting for you forever, because again, it's stored on a blockchain. And just to add to the NFT example we were just talking about, NFT, standing the technical term, non-fungible token, is essentially like this. Let's say you're at Christie's and we're at an auction and you're now trying to buy the Mona Lisa, right? What's gonna prove that's real? It's literally you get a certificate, right? Saying, hey, this means it was drawn by Da Vinci at this time, whatever. This is basically the same thing as an NFT, except that you can now do that with digital files. You can do that with contracts. You can do that with artwork. You can do it with music. And the greatest thing about it is you, as the creator of that NFT, you are in complete control of your royalties forever. Okay? So even if that piece of art gets sold once, twice, 3, 1 million times, let's say you have a 1% royalty on it, you're going to be receiving it forever.
So we're going to talk a lot more about ownership in this space, because that's really core about what we're doing. And I really want to start by saying this because this is so important. I know when I first entered the space, people would keep going fungible, non-fungible, fungible, fungible. I'm like, what the fuck are you saying?
What the fungible are you saying?
But the more I started to learn and read and understand and study, as Simo was saying, the more I understood is there's so much focus on the technology right now just because it's very, very early days. Just like the very early days of the internet. But the reality is when you're using the internet, you're not thinking about the technology or the workings behind it. And so I know it's intimidating to talk about this idea of NFTs, but I want us to just remember that it's a means to an end. I want us to remember that it is just a technology that is going to be very, very important for you as creators and storytellers and photographers and people in the creative economy. Maybe not in the way that it looks now, but in the not so distant future, and we're going to explain why that is.
Yep.
Very quickly, Mo, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the NFT space and about your awesome project, Destination Drone?
Sure, no problem. When I first started hearing actually about cryptocurrency and blockchain, this was in the year 2013, 2014-ish, right around then. A lot of my friends were in the tech space from America, and they used to just tell me that, hey, there's this new cryptographic currency system that's being, utilized by a lot of the data scientists. And I was like, cool, man, good job. What do you want me to do? It was the next year when it jumped from, at the time, $600 to $3,000. I was like, there's a little bit of money in here, maybe. Okay, let me invest first. So I actually put my money in first before I learned anything. Then, because my money was somewhere, I decided to, know a little bit and understand about the blockchain, which now opened up a whole new realm. Because I started understanding about blockchain technology. I started understanding about all the underlying utilities you could do with things like that, which later on, years and years, I would say in 2019 now, 2020, when the NFT became something that is actually tradable and transferable, it opened up my eyes again, because as a creator, I was just thinking, I'm like, all right, now all of a sudden, my company, for example, we sell a lot of stock video all over the world, like from Shutterstock, Pond5. We're responsible for half the Egypt shots maybe you see, from a lot of different things. But what's cool is, I realized, I'm like, this could be essentially the next format of stock, next format of ownership or art. You get what I mean? And it was a really interesting thing, and that's when we decided to launch our project collectively, me and a few of my partners and co-producers, and we called it Destination Drone, where we want to showcase the Earth from beautiful aerials that have never been seen before. So that's a brief history about how we did it, and it's still growing. Very, very new space.
You should check it out. It's super, super cool. Timmy, can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into NFTs? And he kept this secret for a good year before he hit us with it, and about what NFTY Arabia does and what NFTY Scene does.
Sure. Okay, so I've been in digital content for the best part of a decade. With MO4 Network's media publications and with our clients as well. About 2 years ago, I got obsessed when I found out about this idea of NFTs and what it can kind of do for creatives and the creative economy by taking away the sort of power that has been held by many of these big tech companies we've been relying on for so long to push out our stories, such as Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Spotify, and put that power back into the artist's hands and put the value back into the artist's hands. And so recently we've launched NFTY Scene, which is an online publication hoping to educate and inspire people about the space. And then we have NFTY Arabia, which is an NFT marketplace, which is soon to launch. But more importantly, a creator launchpad which will support artists, creators, photographers, and brands to begin their sort of journey into creating NFTs and their collections online.
Thank you so much. So at the very crux of everything that we are going to talk about is this idea of content ownership. And before we go this, I remember, and I always say this story when talking about NFTs because I think it makes it hit home as strongly as possible. I remember very early days of social media, nearly 2 decades ago, and I was in my mid-20s, so calculate that, and being on a panel very similar to this, talking about social media. And talking about what was not obviously only my belief, but the belief of many, that social media would soon dismantle the very way that we create content, the way that we consume content, and the way that we shape our ideas of the world around us. And here's what's very interesting, that this conversation I was having in Egypt on a panel of creatives after the revolution. So I was in a room full of people and full of industry experts who had seen firsthand the power of social media to dismantle regimes. They had seen firsthand what happens when the middleman and the gatekeeper between me as someone with a voice and the people I am speaking to is removed, what can happen. And yet, they were still reluctant to believe that this would dismantle the very foundations of their industry. NFTs, whatever they look like in the future, because of the technology that they are built on, because of this blockchain, will create a paradigm shift in our industry. And no one stands to gain more from the rise of NFTs than creators and creatives. We are standing on a very similar precipice that we were all those years ago before social media. And it's very easy to sit there and be skeptical and be reluctant because it's difficult to understand. And that's fine. Admit to yourself that this is difficult to understand. It's going to be a challenge to learn about it, but do not dismiss it, because as Egyptians especially, we have this incredible opportunity right now to get in on the ground floor. It is a global level playing field. And I really want to hit home on this idea of ownership for everyone. So Timmy, explain to us what we mean when we say that this technology enables creators for the first time to own their content within the digital space and unlock the value of their content directly from their audiences.
Sure, I think, when everyone put their hand up at the beginning and said they've heard of NFTs or something about NFTs, there's a lot going on about what an NFT is or isn't. You might have heard something maybe good or bad or maybe not true. But the reality is, in a world which is more and more exponentially, we put a focus on our online lives, and the importance of our digital lives become more and more important. Ownership over our assets in the digital world is not going to go anywhere. The concept of owning your content online is not going to go anywhere. And for the longest time, platforms such as Meta or Facebook or YouTube have understood this, but it's kind of gone by the wayside for its users, because as photographers, you go out there and you put your content on Instagram and you get 10,000 likes and you're like, yeah, I made it, but you're not actually making any money from those likes, are you? An interesting fact, Facebook or Meta, they take 100% of the revenues from your content. I think YouTube take about 45% of revenues from your content.
You're doing the work for them because your content is giving them the audiences that they monetize directly.
NFT marketplace, for example, the most popular NFT marketplace that exists at the moment, called OpenSea, takes 2.5% and less of the content that you put out there. An interesting statistic as well, all creators combined on all Facebook platforms in 2021. That's about 300 billion users overall on Facebook. There was about 300 million in revenue, so that's less than $0.1 each. There was only about 25,000 creators of NFTs in 2021, just to show how early we are. And there was about $4 billion in revenue. That's about an average of $150,000 per creator. Just to show the opportunity in this space now. Obviously things have developed and evolved so much. I think tomorrow if you go and you put one of your photos as an NFT, you're not going to suddenly become a millionaire, because just like in the real world, you need to put you out there, you need to create your networks and your communities, which we'll talk about later. But that's the scale of the opportunities that are out there now in terms of getting the value back into your hands and not the value into these centralized institutions and platforms.
What does this idea of content ownership mean to you, and why do you feel it's so important?
For me, I think content ownership is an extremely important thing moving forward now, just because we're a bit more aware of what's actually happening with our data. 10 years ago, you say that to someone, all they care about is their page. You know what I mean? They want to make sure they get the right pictures or whatever. But in a real reality, we only really search for different answers when there's maybe a potential alternative. Like now, with NFTs again, you can, again, own your stuff. So again, what does that really mean? It means that you, at the end of the day, are the one that's certified as the creator, certified as the artist, certified as the person putting the royalties. You're the one essentially programming this smart contract of a item to do whatever you need it to do. And by the way, it doesn't stop at art or just music, for example. People are using now real estate NFT contracts, some of them that fulfill themselves and given contracts at certain times. So there's a lot of different use case scenarios, which we'll also I think get into soon, that you can really do with NFTs that you couldn't do with just, let's say, an image or a picture or anything that you've been uploading to anything prior to that.
I just want to add to that as well. How many people have had a sort of violation against a photo or piece of content that they've posted and had to remove it randomly or automatically? Almost everyone. On an open decentralized network such as Ethereum blockchain, for example, the person who created Ethereum can't come and say, I don't like that content, it's removed, because you are the actual owner of that content. And that's the difference between a company or social media platforms that exist today, is they can do what they want with your content.
So Web 2 gave us the power of distribution. It gave us a voice. Web 3 gives us the ability to monetize the audiences that we have created around us. Now, I'm going to move on now from here, if it's okay with both of you, to the idea of utility. But I know the format is usually we ask questions at the end, but it's because we kind of build up the story. It's very important if anyone has any questions or confusion still around this idea of ownership, because I know it can be a bit of a trek to get your head around. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. Tahir.
T.
Since the blockchain is ultimately not very regulated, and it's obviously an open kind of market, how as an artist can I protect myself from fraud and from people stealing my content and selling it without my knowledge as an NFT, which is something that's happened pretty frequently in the past few years? What are the protections in place for artists who are using this medium?
Great question.
So the nice thing about blockchain technology is the provenance that comes with it. So if T uploads an NFT, I can see who it's uploaded to, because that's your wallet that's uploaded it. I can see it traded and I can see where it came from. If another wallet goes and uploads that piece of content, I can see that it's not you. Everything on the blockchain is transparent in that way. However, you're right. Right now, because it's such a new technology, it's like the wild, wild west. And a lot of people, there's a lot of backed actors trying to see how they can scam and get away with it and find new ways to sort of come into that space. And I think that is the challenge decentralized platforms are finding now, is how can we give all of the power to the people, but still protect the people at the same time? And that's a constant ongoing debate. And what I think will end up happening with a lot of these Web3 platforms, it will be a mix between that level of decentralization, giving the power to the owners, but with some sort of regulatory committee in order to make decisions to protect the users as well.
So it'll be a bit centralized.
Exactly. It will be a bit of this, but most of that.
Can I add something to that real quick? I just want to say also, to add to Timmy's point, it's always contingent per platform, okay? So this is also an interesting thing. For example, let's say you're on OpenSea, and the biggest collection is the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Well, someone actually cannot go and take screenshots and re-upload them on their own just because OpenSea, again, its own centralized company. They have their own set of rules. Even mimics of certain NFT projects have been completely banned. Now, another interesting thing about the space, it's a very democratic space. So, for example, if they find out about X person impersonating this person did that, it ends up being really known, and you're X'd out usually on most platforms instantly. So that is another thing that's an interesting thing, and I've seen it happen at least with different platforms.
You had a question?
Just triggered by Tar's question of like, how do you define ownership? Is it the creator? Like, for example, if I bought a piece of art from an artist, am I the owner, or is the artist the owner now? Who gets the royalties and who is able to proceed with the transaction?
So the beauty of smart contracts in which NFTs are built on is the creator can decide exactly what happens with that content moving forward. So for example, I can say if I release an NFT or an NFT collection, all holders get complete intellectual property rights. They can do whatever they want with them. They can put them on their food, restaurant van, do what they want with them. Or I can say they don't have the IP rights, but they can use it for certain commercial uses up to a certain amount per year. Or they can say they can't use them at all, their image whatsoever, but they just own that specific NFT. So you have the right to implement the rules that happen with it after, just like you have the right to implement the royalties, etc. in that situation.
And then of course the massive, and Mo touched upon this earlier, one of the biggest benefits to you as creators is this idea of ongoing, in perpetuity, royalties, right? When you give your art to an art gallery and they sell it, you make money once and that's it. Now, every single time that piece of art is sold on till the end of time, you are making a percentage from that sale to whatever percentage you've decided to embed into your smart contract. It's fucking cool. Question, go.
ازاي هيمشوا مشروع ownership now that if someone buys an NFT and it's on Web3, for example, and for commercial use it's still on Web2?
Brilliant question.
احنا already عارفين ان you're not supposed to use content to use anyway, so how would they regulate? Can you get
Yeah, so this is a very, very good question, and actually it's one of the discussions that is happening most strongly right now within these spaces about these kind of gray areas of if I sell a piece of art or my photo as an NFT, do I still also have the right to put it on a stock platform, for example, to sell it to an advertiser, to put it on a billboard, because there's a lot of gray areas there. Timmy, answer the question.
Do you want to go for this one?
Yeah, sure. Listen, the way you gotta consider, especially if you're gonna be an emerging NFT artist or creator, you're gonna have to think about a lot of questions. You're not gonna go back in your old work and be like, oh, you know what, I put this picture here, people liked it, I got a lot of likes, I'm gonna sell it now, right? Because I've also realized one thing, selling an NFT is an extremely difficult thing. So don't also assume that tomorrow you're gonna go put your artwork and people are gonna start paying, right? It doesn't work that way. You gotta build a variety of things here with it, but the number one thing you do want to go entering the Web 3.0 space is with brand new kinds of content. You see what I mean? So I've seen at least the more successful NFTs are the ones that, for me at least, are a bit more on the animated side. Like, I like video NFTs, for example. I don't like picture NFTs. So I like video NFTs, so I'm also more inclined to create more things like that. So I know as well, no one in the world has videos like that, so they can never copy it. You know why? Because if they can see or view this NFT on Web 2.0 as a video, they might be viewing it in 480p, HD, for example, right? But the real actual file at the end of the day could be a 4K render of, let's say, a drone flight. That's what we do. And we know no one has it. And also, since we programmed it in the blockchain, for example, it's a 1 of 1. Or I can make 100 editions, for example, and I can let 100 people own it. So I think it's a combination of these things, and going into the space, you really want to get creative. You don't want to do something that has been done before. I also see all some of the projects now, like the mimic projects. They literally copy paste everything. All it is, by the way, so you know, a lot of times it's a mix of computer programming, okay, and art, but in layers. Essentially, you're drawing different layers, and it's giving you different combinations. So you have to be a bit more creative. You have to understand that, you know, things that are just viewed on Web 2.0 don't mean other people can just take them and remint them or do different things with it. And that's, again, one of the cool things about it, because you get to decide, or you, even as the owner, you just bought an NFT, you get a lot of cool things with that, depending what project you're buying.
So, talking about cool things, this is the next point that we need to get to, is this idea of utility. Now, I am a huge, big believer that NFTs are only going to explode and become a part of our lives in the way that the technology should allow them to do once people start to think about NFTs in terms of utility and not as standalone art for art's sake. I know there are artists in the room that hurts them a little bit, but it's in your benefit, and I will explain why. You know, Shanku doesn't like advertising anymore because he's a filmmaker, but I'm also going to tell you why it's great for you. And so what does utility mean? So basically what utility does is embeds into the NFT rewards or rights or privileges that only you have access to as the owner of that NFT, like a private members club. So for example, let's say Guna, this is a free idea for Orascom, anyone from Orascom in here. So let's say Guna decides to release an NFT project, they could embed a utility into the NFT that you get free DJ lessons of Naguib Sawiris, for example. And so as photographers, I ask both of you, A, what do you think about utility within the photography space, because it is art, and B, could you give me examples of the type of utility that photographers could embed into their NFT projects?
Sure, yeah, I'm in agreement with you in that the mass adoption of NFTs will happen in a seamless way where people just see it as a sort of benefits, membership, royalty sort of access to something, whether it's access to events or merchandise or access to a cool community. And I happen to have this digital work of art, or maybe it's not a work of art, maybe it's just a digital drawing or a piece of card or that I have online in my digital wallet that gives me access to these things. But then that caused it's an ongoing debate, especially when it comes to the art world and photography world, because what is the utility or benefit of art, right? It's to inspire, to make you feel something. That is the utility of art. And so it's a bit of a challenge for creators to keep up with other NFT collections, because for the most part you want to create art for the sake of art, and that should be the utility. And there are collectors who are just collecting this NFT art for the sake of art, but it's not performing as well as those who are being able to offer something in addition to it. So for example, with photography, could you sell an NFT but also send them a high-res print for free? Could you sell them an NFT but perhaps also give them a free photo session with that NFT? These are some kind of examples which you can add when you're starting off, when you don't have such a name for yourself, to try to build a community around your collection.
You know, Sima was talking earlier about when Rania asked her the question about working for free or not at the beginning. NFTs are a great way to raise funds. And it is a great way to leverage your audience. Your audience are invested in you, right? If you're on social media and you have a following, whether it's 1,000 followers or 1 million followers, those followers believe in you and they're invested in you and they're invested in your ideas, but they don't get a benefit out of that. They don't get a financial benefit out of that, neither do you. But by creating some sort of NFT or token that allows you both to benefit, they become even more invested in your success, and you are able to raise money from their existence. I'm going to go back to the Shank example with filmmaking. So we go back to the day where Shank goes, fuck it, I don't want to do advertising anymore. I want to tell these big, longer stories, right? So you now have to go and you have to wait for a script and you have to wait for a production company and someone needs to fund this and someone needs to pay for this shit, right? But you could create some sort of NFT project around this film and offer people utilities such as being an extra in the film, or being allowed to script 10 seconds of the film, or whatever.
Or taking royalties from the film if it becomes a success later.
So I mean, once you start, the use cases, it's such early days that the use cases are endless. It really just depends on your kind of imagination and your passion to kind of explore where the possibilities are.
I think just the main point there, essentially, it's turning everyone not just into a consumer of your art, but an investor in you as an artist. And that is the power in NFTs, to create that feedback loop and that community which build up your project.
And it's the same for brands, by the way. I know, so for example, we have the amazing powerhouse behind GLC Paints in the audience, and it's the same and it's the same for brands. It is an opportunity to get your consumers. Your consumers are only invested when they purchase the product, but this is an opportunity to get them truly invested in the brand in ways that were impossible beforehand. We've talked some theory. Let's see some practical case studies of NFT artists and photographers who have made billions.
Billions already?
No one's made billions. Someone made
So I'll show you
million.
a couple of big ones at the end who have made quite a lot of millions.
A lot of millions. A lot of millions.
Are you making a lot of money out of it?
Oh, we're making millions.
But not a lot of
Trillions. Okay, so this is a well-known travel photographer. Maybe you know him on Instagram. He's called Jacob. He has over 1 million followers. So, like Mo was saying earlier, there's something called generative art in NFTs, and what that is, essentially, the artist will create several layers. For example, if I was an illustrator, I could create a face, a hat, different eyes, different backgrounds. I put that through a code, and it randomly generates however many NFTs or designs that I want with different layers. Now, the cool thing about that is you then get different rarities that are completely randomly computer generated, and higher rarity NFTs within that collection would be more valuable than lower rarity NFTs. So what Jacob's done here is he's taken a real photo of this river landscape in various different seasons, and then he's photo manipulated different quarters of this photo. So you have winter and summer, and you have a man jumping here, and etc. And it's a really creative way, which I hadn't seen done with photography before. Put that through the code and came out with 1,000 different versions of this photo with various different seasons as well. Next one. Should I just click the bottom one? Cool sound.
Nice.
Okay. So NFTs are put on the blockchain through something called a smart contract. This is essentially the metadata, all the data which explains what the NFT is, who owns it, and what it can do in the future. So because it's online and it's digital and it's on blockchain, the photo doesn't have to stay static forever. This is where it gets really cool, and where you can do a lot of creative things with photography and smart contracts, is you can make it interactive and change based on certain modules or certain things happening. In this scenario, Ali Musa, who's a well-known photography NFT artist, if you buy this NFT and it exists online, it will actually change over time. So in the morning it has one certain color because she's taken the photos during that time. She's taken the photos every hour of the day over the course of a day. And at night your photo, which lives in your wallet, will actually be a nighttime version of that photo as well. So it's a timed NFT. This one's really cool as well. So you can trigger your photo to change over time based on kind of anything. So this project, what they did is they took a bunch of photos of Robert De Niro, happy, sad, angry, confused, and they triggered it to the price of ETH, the cryptocurrency in which Ethereum blockchain is built. And so when Ethereum is down, he gets sad, and when Ethereum is up, he gets happy.
Is he really sad right now?
So right now, he'd be really sad. If you Google this project, it's just a bunch of really pissed off Robert De Niro's right now. So yeah, I think you can hopefully be inspired and curious about the kind of things that you can do by triggering it to just about any sort of database that's online. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier with utility. It's an NFT photographer, which is the photographer who distributes through NFTs in UAE called Willie
Can I
Shah.
just interrupt you, because you said something really interesting there. So Timmy said NFT photographer, then he corrected it immediately, but it's actually a really good point. We need to get it out of our heads. NFT photography is not a genre of photography. That's not a thing. It is a method of consumption. It is a technology that allows us to create and consume in a new way. You don't need to get into your head that I will now be an NFT filmmaker and an NFT. No, that's like it's
the equivalent of saying, like, if some new music released and I tried to sell you it because it's a CD, it's because you like the artist and the music. So the underlying format of the technology, like we're saying, will kind of evolve over time. So Walid Shah has this great sort of project, which is this fictional magazine called Mawjood. He's been doing it for years. And then what he did is he sold these Mawjood fictional covers as NFTs and offered those holders who buy one of these NFTs a free shoot to put them on the cover of his fictional magazine. And they did quite well. Next one. So I'm going to highlight two of the biggest photographers in the NFT space today. This one's called Drifter Shoots, and the best collections are one which obviously tell a story, they have substance, and they have that sort of element of variety and rarity in them. Kind of clear what he does. He's a bit of a daredevil. He goes into different buildings and sites across the world, and he takes pictures of his vantage point. And he has, I can't remember how many the collection is, but it sold more than 4 million volume in trading till today. Next one. So this is one of the pioneers in terms of photographers in the NFT space, and just kind of shows you the benefit of being in a sort of early mover advantage. I can only maybe count 4 or 5 photographers distributing their work as NFTs in the Middle East. So there's a huge advantage here in terms of the content that you've already probably taken or that you might take to get into that space early in the region. So this is Justin Abasano, Twin Flames. That photo on the right actually sold as an NFT for $2.5 million, which is the 5th most expensive photo ever taken.
And the collection that it was sold in as Christie's was alongside names like Diane Airbus. And so this just gives you an idea about how even the traditional auction houses are now considering this art that they're putting it against iconic photographers of our time.
So the idea of the series, again, so he was shooting genetic twins from across the world. And that was it, yeah. And so $8 million in volume traded. And I think there's another fact. In 2021, the NFT photography space altogether, there was about $200 million. That was the market size. That's the same market size of all printed photography in volume. Print photography has been around since paper. NFT photography has been around for about a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it puts things into perspective. It's not a fad, guys.
Some numbers about this product specifically, like what's the utility behind this product, or what's is he a very famous photographer, for example?
No, he was unknown.
He was a first mover kind of advantage in the space, and he took this collection of 100 twins and put it out there. Now, obviously, for starters, I think if we go back a year to when NFTs blew up, they blew up because of art first and foremost. People weren't really thinking about the technology, which is why when you think of NFT today, you usually think about, oh, it's just art. And so there was a lot of people buying these NFT artists because they believe these artists will become big. Now here's the utility, a simple one. If I bought that at the time for, what was it, when he reset 0.1 ETH, maybe about $200, $100, the minimum price for one of these now is, I think, more than $100,000. So that by itself is a great utility. Now what happens often with these artists when they get bigger, they reward their holders, right? And their NFTs are valuable. So they'll give them free NFTs from future shoots because they've been holders as well of their last NFTs, giving their holders even more value. That's purely monetary utility. I'm not talking about in real life utility.
So a lot of times what will happen is people will build out a roadmap for the collection that they're dropping, and they'll be like, oh, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. And as a buyer of that work, you need to be looking at, do I trust the team that is putting this collection together? Do I know of this artist? Do I know their background? What is the... We'll talk about doing your own research, which is a big thing in this space in a second. But what you'll see is unifying between all of these things that Timmy showed you is that these aren't photographers that have just kind of rummaged through their archives and gone, yeah, I meant that one. There's a lot of diligence in building a story around it. And not only do you have to think about building a story around the collections or the projects that you put out, but you also have to act not just as a business person, as Seema was saying, but also first and foremost, you have to become a marketeer. Because it is now your obligation to not only build your audience, but to reach out to this audience. Now, Mo on my left is a natural salesman, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about what are the spaces that people need to be connecting in and engaging in to build the communities that will allow them to unlock the value in their work.
No, all right, cool. So basically, I think, to answer this question, very interesting, question. I think before anything, you must ask yourself, is what you're doing actually giving any kind of value to anybody or anyone, all right? Because what you might see as valuable, what you might end up spending hours on, either could have been potentially done by somebody else or done in a different way but better, whatever. It could be a million things. So first find the true value you want to present to people, and again, that can come through art, it can come through music, it can come through a lot of various options. Whether you do want to provide utility or not, there's a lot of artists out there, by the way, they tell you, hey, I spent hours on this thing, I don't need to prove any utility. It's a beautiful piece of work, I want to sell it. Sure, by the way, do it, do whatever you want, right? And then it's the other projects as well where they're like, you know what, wow, we actually have to give real value, so let's think of what we can actually give, right? So it starts with the value aspect, but then the bigger aspect of it is going back and really growing your community, right? And growing in your community really can start with, let's say if you're in school and it's like, you're working to raise some money for a project, or let's say if you're a bit more on a different side on the digital platforms and on social media, you start looking out and building social media networks and online communities, find other people that like your stuff. One thing we found interesting in our project, no one I knew went and bought some of our NFTs, and they were not even that much money, they're like 0.04 ETH for the pictures. It's nothing, like maybe like 80, 90 bucks. But when we first launched, we had a lot of the cool influx from a lot of drone enthusiasts and things like that. So we found that was pretty cool. So always know as well, you might not be thriving within your local community, or people don't see your value, your art, but there's millions of people online and elsewhere in the world, and now moving to blockchain, different networks and things like that are exposed to this stuff on a daily basis. And they're either trying to support the movement and grow it, they either want to just own a piece of the internet, you know what I mean? Like Timmy said as well, they might believe in an artist that they know is gonna boom 5, 6, 7 years from now. So, okay, cool, hey, I'll buy that. At the end of the day, think of it like this. If you guys remember the days of the early MySpace and Facebook and YouTube, right? Imagine if each one of us had a YouTube channel since 2004, and you've been consistently uploading all your videos that are on your phone from day one. You would organically have millions and millions of subscribers. Why? Just because you've been doing it for the longest, right? So it goes back to some of these artworks, why they're being sold for that much, is yes, they've been there first. Some other ones have actually great, art, like Beeple, for example. I'm a big fan of this guy, if you guys seen him. Really cool artwork. It's like, wow, I want to own a piece of that. It's like a modern day Picasso. So it's building a community, creating value, marketing it to the right people as well. Don't think also that, you're going to do something and then maybe spend a whole bunch of money on ads and it's not selling, right? That's the thing about Web3. It's not a sell it in your face, hey, I'm controlled by all the companies trying to sell me something. It's a bit different. People understand ownership of content, and they like to see valuable things that, whether they can collect, give them pleasure, they can trade it. A lot of things are being traded now. And now also a lot of sports federations are launching their own unique NFT projects, like UFC, like the NFL, like the NBA. So there's a lot of cool things that give a lot of different types of utility, and they all kind of integrate. So you just have to find your your medium. Right?
And Discord, put your hands up if you're on Discord. Who's on Discord? A Few people, good. Because Discord is where the NFT conversations are happening. Discord, Twitter Spaces are core to these conversations, are core to building these communities. I know it's frustrating if you've built up a big following on Instagram, especially because it's so relevant for visuals to do this now, but it is vital, take the leap. And I think just one thing, because and we're gonna wrap up and put it out to questions, is I think it's important, I think it's easy to get kind of caught up, and some people will go, well, I don't know why someone would spend $100,000 on a Bored Ape or $1.3 million on a Bored Ape. Who gives a shit? Someone gave it that value.
Well, and another reality.
Value.
Yeah, no, I just want to shine on something else. Guys, like really, I really want to ask that question, because I asked that question, and I actually have to think of, imagine how many, again, rich people there are that do not want to pay taxes, for example, and they know the laws that, hey, if I buy a piece of artwork, it's worth $1 million on my wall, but I don't have to pay any taxes on it. It's literally the same exact thing, right? Now, that's good and bad for however you want to look at it, but in actual reality, if you own art, it is value, right? Same like if you own a piece of jewelry or a gold.
So in conclusion, as Rania said at the beginning, this is all just money laundering.
No, I wouldn't say that. No. I wouldn't say it's money laundering. It's money safekeeping, and this is why personally I'm a big enthusiast of blockchain technologies, because I still feel banks do not need to hold your money, right? Think of that, right? Why does the bank have to tell me that in 5 days I can send money back to America when my brother needs an operation, right? Or whatever. Within Bitcoin, Timmy could be in Colombia like he was 2 days ago, and I can send him $5 million if I wanted to in 2 seconds. No one tells me anything.
Now we're talking about Colombia, and it's getting very...
No, but you know...
On that note of being able to send crypto from one person to another without a centralized institution like a bank, what smart contracts and NFT also does, it removes the bias completely of human error or human bias for lawyers, for example. When I'm transferring an asset from one person to the other, this is code which will transact based on certain triggers. So transferring of any sort of asset in the future is very likely to happen in this sort of smooth way, and not the long bureaucratic bias-based systems that currently sort of rule our world and infrastructures and everything else.
Yes, it changes everything.
What's interesting, I was going to say now, another application of this in a whole serious matter, you know, all of our national IDs can be essentially digitized and turned into NFTs. That can never be changed. You see what I mean? So that's another thing too, you can later just interact whether with, I don't know, it could be all kinds of things, but different things can be used and utilized for, and you can activate, again, like Timmy said, if you own that, you know, that file, it can unlock a lot of things as you as a user, whether it's like a membership style or whatever. So again, the use applications are all new, they're being developed, they're being invented and recreated every day. What we talked about today might be completely different a month from now.
The technology will become invisible, and it's just going to become about the use cases. And it is a just incredible opportunity to be a first mover in a space that will really change the way that we trade, the way that we consume content, the way that we create content, and the way that we shape our identities in the same way that social media and Web 2 did. Does anyone have any more questions? Marwa.
I'm asking about the risks to the investors. Is there any cons here?
So similar to the conversation we were having earlier, at the end of the day, this is a space which is largely unregulated. So like any investment in life, it is usually the risk of the investor to come in and invest because he believes in the project. If the investment doesn't work out, then hopefully that's not because the person specifically had the intention to completely leave the project and not show his face again. And that is a problem that has happened too much in the space, where there's too many scams, where people have created an NFT collection or a project, promised the world.
But again, because it's early days and it's like the wild, wild west. And that's a risk in any new space, in any new sector. That's not something specific to this technology or this space. Something interesting to think about as well is that during the gold rush, who made the most money? Not the people who were finding the gold, the people who were selling the pixels and the axes. So that's something that you want to think about if you're in the tech space as well.
Yeah.
But can I add something to that real quick? Because it's interesting when you say, yes, is the investment, or is it risky, right? I think she said something like that. Question to ask yourself, why would you want to invest if you can create and you have zero risk, right? Everyone right here, right now, could pick up their computer, go make an OpenSea account, learn how to fundamentally mint an NFT, and you just created your first NFT in seconds. Absolutely free. Maybe you'll play, a few fees here and there. But why invest, for example, and this is a big question for a lot of the younger crowd, at least when we were getting started as well. We're like, well, why don't I go buy a bunch? I don't know. Well, how about this? Test the market, make your own, for example. Own your own, right? See how it works. You might sell one that can make you and open up a whole new ball game for you to invest in other projects, right? So again, don't think of it as a pure risk and investment in this weird new dark web world, but just think of it as, there's a whole bunch of people building a brand new internet, and this brand new internet is powered by people like you and me, but except every time I upload a picture, it's not owned by Facebook, it's owned by Mo, Timmy, Amy, whoever's making the piece.
Yeah, I think you can only really learn about the space and how to build communities and how it works by jumping in and kind of being part of it. You can read all the books and theorize and come to talks, but you really need to just sort of dive in. And you have nothing to lose.
As Seema said, and I
You
know
really
she's
have
a
nothing
big
to
fan
lose.
of NFTs, as we discussed earlier. Study. It really, there's no other way around it with this space. Is you've got to study. I find it really funny because I'll get a lot of, whenever I post about NFTs on my Instagram, I'll get a lot of people going, why don't you make videos? Why don't you do Shafi'i? And I'm like, you have Google. And if you just Google, there is so much information out there, and that is, you have to do your own research. There's some complicated ideas to get your head around, unfortunately, at this stage. And also don't give up at the beginning. You'll go into it, and there's all these weird terminologies and all these fucking geeks in their basements making it more complicated than it needs to be, mostly men.
I agree with that.
Don't let that intimidate you, because if you just keep going, what happens is suddenly there's an aha moment. I remember WhatsApping Timmy after weeks and months of reading, going, oh my god, I got it! Wait, I finally understand it. But it just takes a while.
Yeah.
Yes?
Google is there, and I googled how to transfer the money if I actually make a sale. There's nothing about the MENA region or the Egyptian market.
Yeah, very, very, very good, important question.
That is the question which everyone asks, especially in Egypt, about crypto. Obviously, certain countries in the Middle East have regulatory barriers which don't allow the trade of certain cryptocurrencies. In order to start as a photographer, as an artist, and create NFTs, you don't actually need any crypto. You just need a digital wallet or a crypto wallet such as MetaMask. You go onto one of these marketplaces such as Foundation and OpenSea, and most of them, or almost all of them, have the option for something called lazy minting. It means you upload your work and your first buyer is the one who mints it or puts it on the blockchain, and they pay the fees as well as the price for them. Which means you don't actually need the crypto to begin doing it. However, what that means is you have to get creative in terms of how do you withdraw that money if you only have an Egyptian card, and there are ways around it which I won't really talk about on stage now, just in case.
But I also think, coming up in the next few years, there's going to be more light on blockchain, absolutely. Crypto all over Africa and the Middle East. Dubai is taking huge steps.
Really open up Dubai.
Exactly.
Saudi, Bahrain, everywhere.
So I really think with more understanding of this tech, there'll be more applications of it. And there'll be more, we'll have more open use of, let's say, crypto technologies once they're a bit maybe regulated accordingly to per country. But think of it like this as well. Let's say you play the game, right? And you're winning these little fake tokens in the game. You're probably going to go spend those fake tokens in the game, right? So I was one of those guys where I've transacted so many times paying so many people in Ethereum. They just agreed. Let's say I'm paying an artist in America. I can pay him in Ethereum. I can pay certain fees. I can pay tickets online. I can buy things online with crypto, you see? So I end up, I'm just like, it's kind of like PayPal. It's kind of like PayPal, You have your money there. You can use it online for certain things. You can use it for others. And it's just, think of it as another source of an income.
Exactly.
It's not something you can go create your job for today. I want to become an NFT. It's something that's going to support everything you're doing. It can open up new ideas like these, Really cool stuff you can do because you're not just limited anymore. So,
and if you've ever had sort of FOMO for these digital currencies that you've seen have blown up over the months and weeks. This is a great way to sort of diversify your, I guess, your investments in a way that if you're getting that as income, that very likely over the course of 10 years, crypto has been like this as a graph, and you'll find that's actually an investment for yourself as well.
Seema, who is that, am I pronouncing it incorrectly? Okay, who is my new favorite person in the world, has a question.
You
don't have a question, you're just putting your hands up.
No, I do have a question.
Okay.
And I'm going to just say I might not be after this question.
It's okay, go for it.
Okay, because I just speak my mind.
Just remember, women are supposed to support women, but go for
It has
it.
nothing to do with being a woman. It has everything to do with loving the earth we live on. And I'm a huge fan of recycle and reuse, and I try not to recycle and reuse, but the carbon footprint of NFTs is the equivalent of driving about 1,000 kilometers on petrol. So that's a single NFT.
Yeah.
So why, if I care about the future of living in an environment that is, good for me and my kids, would I invest in an NFT?
Thank you very much. That's such a core question, and I'm really glad you asked it.
It's a really important question. It's one that comes up a lot with a lot of artists specifically. They're wary to go into the space because of the environmental impact. So there's different blockchains which have different sort of impact in the environment. Some are very energy heavy, such as Bitcoin. Ethereum currently is very energy heavy, but they're working on going towards, I won't get too technical, but they're working on a new format for Ethereum which will come out in September, called Proof of Stake, which will allow it to be much more energy efficient and take much less energy as well for every transaction. There's other blockchains like Solana, Tezos, Cardano, which you can also upload NFTs on Polygon. Not only are they cheaper for the artists and creators in terms of transaction fees and buyers, but much smaller percentage of energy use for them. And when you say, I think it's important and good for me and good for my family, I think it really sometimes depends on, there's a lot of good that can come out from blockchain technology as well. There's a lot of value to people's lives that can come out of technology, and what is good and what is bad can sometimes be subjective, especially from maybe a public or governmental perspective as well. So the main thing for that is different blockchains, different energy, and the idea is a lot of them are working towards this proof of stake to try to combat that issue.
My personal counter to that is just another question to you. Let me ask you this. How many trees are cut down every year to make paper? How much plastic and oil is burnt to make wax and oil and all kinds of pens and all kinds of things we use in school, right? How much paper is used just on books, right? To educate us about the things we want to learn or whatever. We've seen this trend, of course, from at least the last 100 years grow, and then now there's been a little bit more awareness, people moving digital. Now, with something like this, I can be completely also understanding, like, hey, I heard, some blockchain to do this, this, and that. But if we really actually take all the computing power in the world, all right, guys, honestly, my opinion, and you compare it to another industry, like mining, like the oil industry, like in America, just the gun industry alone, that has 1,000,000 times more harm, and they generate 10 times more carbon footprint than anything in the planet. So if anything, actually, I think NFT and Web3 is going to solve a lot of these things. You know what I mean? Or at least allow other people, especially the younger kids that are now just strictly learning on iPads, computers, everything, to create art. I saw a cool little project by this little kid. He was drawing these like dolphins or something like that. And he's like 11 years old, by the way. He sold like $300,000-$400,000 in 6 months. So that was a super cool thing I got to hear about. So I think it gets more people involved.
Look, I think so certainly.
Because I'm a big environmentalist, by the way. I'm a big animal guy. I'm a huge animal guy. You know what I mean? So I'm very big about that. But this is also one of the reasons I really like this stuff as well, because I don't have to go print thousands. You know what I mean? So.
No, but I think certainly though, because this is a new technology, and we as humanity, we have a greater understanding than we did when we started cutting down trees to make books. I think there's certainly, or when we started mining or the oil, it's a different, I think we certainly have more obligation to ensure that our new technologies are built in ways that are fair to the planet, fair to other humans, Yes. So I mean, Simo,
I
yes,
just wanna-
there are tremendous problems inherent with the way that with some of the core of this technology. But I think, as with all things, there are many people that are working on trying to improve that, whether it is through a new tech or whether it is through projects that are designed to cancel it out. But again, like with everything, it's all a work in progress. And I think, like both Mo and Timmy said, there will be tremendous benefits to humanity when you create decentralized technologies that empower people in ways that are unprecedented. I did that thing in my voice where
stand up and say,
because Mar was pacing and rightly so. شنو الأفتراية بقى؟ ما فيش أفتراية؟
Can I add one tiny point to that, because it reminded me something very important? Is, for example, our NFT project is called Destination Drone, right? Our motto actually is called giving our planet, or giving back to our planet one NFT at a time. One of the ideas we had as a utility is that we want to give a kickback every time you buy an NFT. 10% of the proceeds automatically can go to a charity, for example, right? So, goes back again about asking questions about charities. I hate charities. You know why? Because I don't know where the money's going.
Exactly.
Right? I don't know where nobody knows. They spend it on ads, they spend it on celebrity endorsements. We don't know. Blockchain can solve that through something called decentralized autonomous organizations, where you, as an NFT holder, can vote, all of us right here, collectively, on where the money wants to go. So there's a lot of cool utilities.
And you can see exactly where it goes as
Wait
well.
till you Google DAO. That's a whole other set of fun.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So how would you ensure that the money actually goes to where you go?
It's transparent. You read it. Me and you can open up the wallet and be like, hey, my dollars went here. So
that's what
the full history of every transaction.
I'm gonna really quickly take a question right here. Yeah?
I have a quick question. I'm curious, and I want to thank you guys for enlightening us, people who are still trying to gather information and understand this new concept and how we are to apply it in our future in terms of understanding and in the business arena. I understand everything you've said, and you guys have been really informative, and I think everybody here is very grateful for that. But what I want to ask you is, and if it's too soon to ask this question, you don't have to answer it. As representatives of this amazing, innovative technology, I think you guys have proven to be experts on where we're at in terms of this space, this NFT technology. You really have done your homework and you've given us some information. But what I wanted to understand a little bit better, if I were to come to you, are you in the process of getting situated to be able to have plans and strategies for prospective clients?
Yes.
Where
That's almost like we planted that question, but we have never met before. So
maybe I planted it last night.
Oh, this is really spontaneous. I'm very curious. What's next?
That's a great question. Let us answer it.
You can pay me after.
You should get an NFT now.
Everyone gets an
on that, actually, we should have done that. So there's something called POAPs, which are proof of attendance protocol, and they're essentially when you attend an event, it could be a sports event or a conference like this or a talk, you receive an NFT which says that you've gone to that event. So we'll do that.
No, but we need to answer the thing that enables you to
I thought you were going to answer.
Oh, shall I answer it? Yeah,
Okay.
so actually, I'm sure there's other people doing this, probably not as well, but we have started a kind of subsidiary of our agency. Our agency is called Mo4. This subsidiary is called Metaphor. And Metaphor is, a round of applause for the name. It wasn't
I got it. Yeah. That was dope, man. That's sick.
Wait for Web 4 and it will make more sense.
And so this agency is actually designed to do exactly that. And we are in talks with a multitude of clients, both independent players and corporate. Do you want to explain what it does?
Just to clarify on that, so with Metaphor, the idea is to strategize how brands can move into sort of Web 3 through NFT technology, through metaverse. But on the creator side, that's where NFTY Arabia comes in. So let's say you're an artist or you're a curator even, and you want to get into the space, what we'll do is to obviously first and foremost educate you on the space, but work with you to strategize what kind of collection, what work could come out as your first and hopefully ongoing NFT pieces as well, and help you as well build that community and understand that space as much as we can too, and it will be sold on our marketplace. But the cool thing as well, not only will it be sold on our marketplace, it automatically will also be sold on marketplaces such as OpenSea and be available there where there's larger volume. So you're targeting both the niche of the region but also a global audience as well. That's on the NFTY Arabia side with the sort of creators launchpad. And yeah, like Amy said with Metaphor, it's very much sort of you know, bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 for brands.
We're just very, we were, when we started in social media, I think something that we've always been very, very proud of is that so many brands in Egypt are on social media because, you know, right time, right place, but we were able to get them on social media very, very early in a way that allowed them to compete in those digital spaces globally. Some huge FMCGs had their social media launch in Egypt before they did in major global markets. And we're just very excited to be able to now do the same for this space, but more interestingly and more excitingly for us to be able to do it with creators and not just brands.
I think it's going to get to the point soon where both brands, creators, influencers even, having, for example, an NFT collection or some sort of presence in the metaverse will be as normal as, oh, I have to now have a TikTok now. I need to now have an Instagram. I need to now have some sort of space.
Someone call Metaphor. Like that.
Is that the ad?
Thank you guys! Thank you so much, Mo, especially for this talk. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Timmy. I'll see you in the office on Sunday at 9 a.m. Okay.
If anyone has any other questions moving forward about NFTs or you're asking about crypto and stuff, you can message me on Twitter, Timmy Mowafi.
Oh my God. We've never won an advertising award, so this is like...